So we move on with our event with our first speaker, and we are very pleased to have her with us tonight. Where are you? There she is over here. Catherine Malotky. I've known Catherine for many, many years, and currently she is working in the development area of development, director of development at Luther Seminary. She calls herself a philanthropic advisor. She's well known to the women of the ELCA because she's been writing for a number of years the article on the back page of Gather. And we're really pleased to have you come and set the stage for us tonight, Catherine Malotky. Let's welcome her.
Thank you, Larry. It is great to be here, and it's just a little frightening to realize how long we have known each other. Okay, so I want to explain. You guys are lucky. I will try not to spit too much. Good? Bring it on. All right, excellent. So I want to tell you a little bit about this title, because of course we don't, in my house when our children were little, stupid was a bad word, right? So I want to tell you about this a little bit. So what neurobiologists and psychologists tell us is that things happen to us when we get anxious. Whether it's when we're afraid, whether it's a sneak up on you and jump kind of fear, or something bad is going to happen kind of fear where you're anticipating, our bodies respond in a predictable way. We get flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, hormones, that are designed to help us be ready to deal with that threat that we're sensing, right? You know what I'm talking about. And what happens inside, in terms of how we process then, is that those hormones force all of our energies to go to our amygdala, our reptilian brain. It's all about instinct and reaction, right? But guess what's missing from the amygdala? Thought, rational things. Do you know what I mean? That's missing because what are the three common reactions? Do you know what they are? Flight, fight, freeze. So with fight, think charging grizzly, right? Actually, I don't want to think about that too long. The second one is flight. So think about a gazelle, or me, if there were a charging grizzly. And the third one to think about is the rabbit in my backyard who thinks that if it holds still, my puppy will not see it. Right? Yep, holding, and sometimes the puppy does that because she doesn't want the rabbit to see her either. It's pretty funny. The other night I went out and she had her beat and she looked at me like this. And then went right back. Some of you in the back couldn't see that. I just darted my eyes over to the side. Yeah, I see you, Mom. But I'm right there on that rabbit. Anyway, but in all of these cases, if our thought processes, our capacity to have some level of maturity and some way of thinking about what we're feeling, if that all gets sidetracked and it's all about feelings and reaction, we can get stupid. Right? Because, especially in our day and age, there's not usually a charging grizzly. Or, you don't have to be a gazelle, nor do you have to be a rabbit that's frozen. So one of the things I want to invite you to do is think about this idea that anxiety makes us stupid as we talk about what we're talking about this evening. Okay? I just want to hang that out there for you to think about. All right. So, building a stewardship house. I want you to do something seated where you are, and those of you who are at home, do it too. So what I want you to do is reach out in front of you. Don't hit your neighbor. Reach. Now I want you to really reach, really stretch, 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 stretch. Really stretch. Part of this is because you've been in the car. But stretch, stretch. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Notice what your body is feeling. Notice what it's feeling. Keep reaching. Work at it. Make your body work. What do you notice? Relax. Yeah, did you hear that? Right? That's tiring, isn't it? that is tiring. Culturally, we're told to reach for success, right? That's what we're told to do. We're surrounded by messages that tell us we need to succeed. And we're supposed to know how to do this. So I want you to think about how you learned this. And then I want to go back to a story, a biblical story. I just love this picture. It's a very modern interpretation, or an interpretation by a modern artist of the Supper at Emmaus. Isn't that fascinating? I love that. I just love that. It breaks my brain open. Right? It just breaks my brain open. I just think that's so interesting. So here's the question. If we are surrounded by cultural messages that we're supposed to succeed, and nobody really tells us how to do that, and that's particularly true around financial matters, where do we turn to? So you can see the question. We live in a capitalist economy. Was Jesus a capitalist? Can we turn to the Bible to help us with answers? Now, I realize I'm talking to ELCA Lutherans, but still, right? What do we do? Jesus was not our financial planner. The Dow did not exist, nor did stockholders, and we may wish the Dow did not exist after the last few days, nor did stockholders, nor did student loans, nor did the 401k, nor did credit scores. Unfortunately, none of those existed then. So our question then is, which way is the right way? Can you see who's on that screen? Anybody know who it is? Yeah, the Cheshire Cat, absolutely. Do you remember this story from Alice in Wonderland, where Alice comes to a fork in the road, and there's the Cheshire Cat, emerges, out of the mists. And Alice goes, "Excuse me, can you tell me which way to go?" And the Cheshire Cat said, "Well, where do you want to go?" And Alice says, "Well, I don't know." And the Cheshire Cat says, "Well, then it doesn't really matter which way you go." Right? It's a lovely way of talking about it. So if we don't really know how to succeed, we don't really know what success looks like, unless we're just looking at Warren Buffett or something like that. But what does it look like for those of us who are kind of normal people? Where can we go? We just have this vague idea, some idea of an American dream. Yet all of our decisions, both uninformed and wisely decided, will be guided by that reality that we hold and rarely verbalize. So one of the things I think we need to be about in the church is helping people discern direction. I think, based on the work that I've done, that most people in our culture ask the question, especially about financial matters, how much can or will I get? Okay, that's the common question based on my experience. Notice that it's all first person, me, myself, and I. How much can I get? What's influencing us to ask that question? What's the cultural buzz about money and finance? To find out, let's think about ads. I'm going to show you a commercial in just a moment. It'll last about a minute. And it's charming. It's actually gone viral on YouTube. It came out first for the Super Bowl in 2011. You may very well have seen it. But I want you to watch and think about what kind of messages are we getting about finance and success as we watch this commercial. Okay? Here we go. It's charming. You can understand why it went viral, right? But now the question is, What are the messages behind that? Does anybody have any ideas? What did you notice? It's charming. So it's not the usual, like the Datsun commercials where it's like, rah, 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 rah. You know, this guy has this big grovelly voice, right? That's not it. It's very charming. Yes, ma'am? Huh?
We want power.
We want power. Yeah, you nailed it. Right on the nose, in my opinion. It's charming. I mean, the kid wants to be able to be Darth Vader and all that stuff. But isn't part of what's so appealing about Darth Vader is that ability? Down he goes, right? And to be able to change something just by willing it. But then notice, do you remember the look between the mom and the dad, right? What else do you notice about the setting of this commercial? Where is it happening?
Very affluent.
A very lovely, affluent home, right? It's a brand new Passat, right? Yep. So who's the target audience? We can tell that. Either those who are in that world or who aspire to it. And we know that the world around us is much more diverse than that, both economically and racially and in all kinds of ways, right? Now, a commercial can't do it all. In fact, that would diffuse the commercial. It wouldn't be nearly as effective, right? But what is it about power and success? How does that work out? And that power should be in that little boy's hands or in the daddy's hands, right? What is that about that power, particularly for us as people of faith? So what if we change the question? What if the question we ask is, how much do I need? I think that's a powerful stewardship question, especially for people like all of us who have plenty, particularly when we think about where we live from a global perspective. So what if we changed our perspective? What if we changed our question? What if we changed our vision, that thing which draws us forward? The imagination we're driving towards. I want to read a vision that's biblical. From Revelation 22. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit in each month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. That's a whole nother kind of power. So how do we think about this? If we're going to have a new vision, how do we think about this? And, go back to that anxiety thing. If we had a different vision, might our anxiety go down a little? Might we get wiser, smarter, less reactive? I'd like to suggest that we need to pay attention. Instead of freaking out that the Dow is going down for who knows what reasons, seriously, right? I mean, everybody's pontificating about why the Dow is going down. Why are they, oh, please. It's just irrationality right now, right? So what I want you to do now is stop now and breathe for a minute. Close your eyes even, or fix on a spot, go inward and think. I want you to think about the actual living of your financial life. Really look. Where do you, based on the way you live your financial life, not the way you would like to be, where do you fall on the continua between organized and haphazard? We all fall somewhere in there. Between intentional and spontaneous, between sustainable, and short-lived. This is part of knowing yourself. Let the financial life you are living teach you what is important to you based on the decisions you make. Is this what you want to be true? Come on back. That's the first thing, is know yourself. Lots of people don't know themselves financially. We're just spending with some idea of where we're going to go, right? The second one is, how much do you need? So an article earlier this month in the New York Times about a couple who decided to track every penny they had spent. And they went back to that monthly and reviewed it and said, do these expenditures align with our values? And if they didn't, they decided to do something different. Fascinating. So decide how much you need. They decided they didn't need some things that they thought they did because they became clear about their values. And the third one is manage risk. How do you save for a rainy day? What do you want to be true? I know a guy who had owned some property that he had inherited from his parents, and he decided it was pretty complicated for him, and he was doing a rabbit thing and freezing, and he said, I don't want to have to manage this, so I am going to just leave it to my kids and let them figure it out. Probably not a good idea, right? Complicated. How do we unwind that stuff so that we aren't frozen? So the question is, how do you orient yourself? Where's your, this is an image from a cathedral in Burgundy, France. And it's Angel Gabriel waking up the Magi and showing them where the star is. So part of it is, what's your North Star? How do you get there? How do you orient? Don't start with the money. Start with your values. And oh my gosh, think about how John started us, right? Think about the kinds of values that surround us as people of faith. What does that mean? We're capitalists. We can't get away from that even if you want to. How do we do it well? How do we do it in a way that aligns with what Jesus would do? The Pharisees asked Jesus what the most important commandment was, and he answered in two ways. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, right? Basically with everything. And then Jesus' addition was, love your neighbor as yourself. Which means that there's a balance between loving yourself and loving your neighbor. And that's the tricky place when you're trying to answer the question, how much do I need? Especially when we look to other places and there are people who are hungry, who'd be going to bed hungry tonight, or who have died in a truck trying to get away from the war, right? You've heard that story about what happened in near Vienna. So orienting is really important. And then plan. We can plan. Figure out what's your spending plan, what's your giving plan, what's your saving plan, what's your investing plan. And once you get all that figured out, you still have to go to a place of trust. We still have to go to that place. Trust is rooted in knowing and planning, but still it's necessary. Think for yourself, what's at risk if you were to redesign your financial life around what you need? I wonder sometimes if the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 was actually Jesus' capacity to inspire everyone in that congregation to open their own satchels and share with each other. From my perspective, as a North American Christian, that would be just as miraculous as duplicating the loaves and the fishes. Right? If we trusted, if we believed that it is God's intention that we have enough and that we will have enough, and that that will be true in the future, what difference would that make to us? might we not then feel free to be generous? Because you can. Because you are the body of Christ. I wonder how it is that we as the church are helping the people in our congregations learn how to know themselves and how to plan and how to shift their vision. How are we helping them to trust, to turn down the anxiety, to discover the gift and the joy of generosity? It's kind of an interesting question. Lots of good work to do. And I, for one, am grateful for your partnership. Thank you.
So we have about 8 minutes for questions and other comments that you might like to bring into the room, either through the hashtag method, the Twitter, or we have here in the room, and so Pete will facilitate that.
And actually, we'll start with one off Twitter.
Great.
They'd like to hear more about how to reduce anxiety so all these other wonderful things can start to happen.
Yeah. Well, think back to that slide. In my experience working with people in their financial lives, the most important thing is to actually be real about what's happening. Right? Invite people. So I work in a congregation. I belong to a congregation in Edina, Minnesota. Right? Cake eaters, as one of my daughters would say. And we offered an adult forum on getting organized, and we used as a model the stuff that emerged, actually, how appropriate, that emerged out of Katrina. So how does one rebuild a financial life after a disaster? And so that was the guiding question. We may not need to worry about a big flood, tornado maybe, hail, not so great, but nonetheless, the gift of it is getting organized. And so Louisiana State University has an idea of a grab-and-go box. And so we promoted this as a way of getting organized. You put all your critical stuff. They have a nice list of stuff. You put it all in a box, in a safe that's a little waterproof, a little fireproof, that you can grab and go if you need to. But the deal is, it's all right there. I couldn't believe it. I figured these people have resources. This is not going to be appealing, right? We were flooded with people. So this is not, I mean, you don't have to be a financial planner to do that, right? You can invite people just to get organized. And the gift of that is that then they start to know what's true. I think that's the place to start.
Another one off of Twitter here. What are some practical tools to help us know ourselves financially? Practical tools.
Great. So I think this grab-and-go box is one of them. I think there are other things you can do. If you can call Lutheran Social Service. Lutheran Social Service has a great financial counseling program. You can bring in people to talk about some of the other things like end-of-life planning, healthcare directives, and that kind of stuff. Really powerful stuff. Really, and in Minnesota, there's one common form for a healthcare directive. We could teach people about that, and that might help them get to a place where they're okay talking about dying. And this should be okay for us. Even though it's hard, it should be okay for us. Questions?
Any from in the room? Yep, right here. Then get your microphone so people can hear.
I know you're speaking mainly about individuals and working with families or couples, but I can't help but take the anxiety part of it to the congregation.
Bingo.
And, you know, any ways to just kind of start to approach that in stronger, more healthy ways? Folks who have lived through difficult times in the congregation are in that scarcity mode and still can't see the good numbers even when they're starting to appear. Just Any thoughts on that?
Well, one of my colleagues is going to talk about a strategy for you, but there are some other resources out there that can help you, and some of them are about how do we build trust around money in the church. I think one of the first ways we do that is talk about it, and then let David talk about another way to make it more alive. Other questions?
Oh, okay.
This will be the last one.
You talked about the value of vision
Yeah.
and values
Yeah.
in deciding on your own stewardship.
Yeah.
If, and this follows up on the last question, if the congregation also has a strong sense of vision
Oh, yeah.
and its own values,
Absolutely.
does that help in your experience to increase a sense of good stewardship?
Yep. So my first call was to an inner city congregation in downtown Minneapolis. That congregation was, we had 90 shut-ins. We rarely had a baptism. We had 20 kids in our Sunday school. And I remember talking to another suburban congregation, and I was talking about looking for 6 teachers. And she said, well, we've got 258. And I said, kids, wow, you've got to get up. No, she said, that's how many teachers we need. I was blown away. But now think about if that congregation thought the only way they could be successful was by looking at that big suburban congregation. Or what if that big suburban congregation thought that the only way they could be successful was to be running a homeless shelter and doing after-school programming for poor kids, right? So each congregation needs to come to understand its missional calling. And that gives you a way to identify, are we doing the right thing with our resources? Both human capital and financial capital, right? Time for one more. Okay. Go, he says. Go back there. Another one?
Oh, that's what he means.
Now we've suddenly got tech issues.
Oh,
maybe. No, we're all right?
Parent-
We have one more call, one more question. He's hunting on all those Twitter stuff. I'm
I
so
am,
glad I
yeah.
don't have to do that, I have to say. Anything in the room?
Yes, please. I'm going to hand this off to our Twitter person. She's tweeting from
Oh, she's
in
tweeting.
here.
Nice. Okay, from right in here. I love it. Go for it.
We have a culture in many of our congregations where clergy, and I'm a pastor, so that's why I ask from this perspective, have oftentimes not been privy to the financial information, or we don't know who is giving what, or sometimes when we talk about the budget, when it comes time to talk about my package, which is the biggest part of the budget, I'm not in the room for that conversation. So how does that work? How does this know yourself financially? How do we do that while recognizing that our culture is not going to change overnight?
It's not going to change overnight. Here's my vision. This is a sideways way of answering that because those are powerful questions. But here's my dream state. There will come a day on the shores of the river of life where we all know about our finances. We know them about each other. We know our own. And it is not a hurdle or a separation between us. And we all understand our own callings to be the tree of life, producing fruits in our own season, so that all might be fed. That's my dream. We have a powerful opportunity as a church to invite people into that kind of generosity. And to counterculturally, I think, come to understand the power of money in our lives to separate us and work to change that. For those of us who don't have much, to be content with the dependency that creates. For those who have much, to embrace the responsibility. And for those of us who think we don't have much, to understand that we have more than we know. What does it mean to bring all of us into that powerful place of ministry on behalf of the gospel? Thank you.